Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining this movement. It is a movement. We all know that. Pierre always says that this is not a leadership race, this is a movement. Alright, it is such a privilege to be with all of you here on a wonderful Thursday afternoon. You know, when we were planning for the event initially, a lot of my friends told me, hey, it's an afternoon, and that too on a weekday. You're not going to get people around. You know what we can tell them? That any time is a good time to stand for our freedoms.
Yes.
Any time is a good time to stand for our country. And any time is a good time for a Pierre Polievre rally. So before I continue, it's one of the most important things I want to tell. And is everyone a member here? You know, my friends, if you don't take a membership, we won't be able to elect Pierre as the leader of the Conservative Party. And then we won't be able to have him as a Prime Minister to take on Justin Trudeau. And as I like to say, that the just incompetence will continue in Ottawa. Right? So, before so my name is Dr. Ash Sachin. Okay, I'm a Guelph resident. I'm a candidate of record from Guelph. I'm a veterinarian. I'm a toxicologist. And last but not the least, just like all of you here, I am an unapologetic conservative.
Yeah.
You know, I'm carrying this book with me today. This is the citizenship guide which I had to read to become the Canadian citizen. Okay, and this is one of the most important books I have with me. It talks about all the greatness Canada stands for. And it talks about all the freedoms Pierre talks about. Okay, it talks about freedom of conscience and freedom of religion, freedom of belief, opinion, thought, press, and freedom of peaceful assembly. And freedom of association. It talks about our great Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom. You know, and it talks about all the freedoms Pierre Polievre always talks about, right? And my friends, these are the freedoms we were born into. These are the freedoms we fought for. And these are the freedoms I immigrated to. And we are not going to let Justin Trudeau's liberal policies take these freedoms away from us. Our country is hungry for truth. Our country is hungry for leadership. And that's why we are here, friends. And we are here today because I trust and I believe, and we trust and we believe that Pierre Polievre will defend our freedoms and he will give us the freest country on earth. It is my distinct honor to introduce my friend Pierre Polievre, who we cannot wait to see as the next Prime Minister of Canada. Pierre Polievre, everyone.
All right, give it up for Dr. Ash, everybody. Dr. Ash. God love him. Thank you very much, Fergus. What a wonderful introduction from our great candidate of record here in this riding. Dr. Ash and his beautiful wife, Amita, is she here? Give her a round of applause wherever she is. Oh, there she is. Good to see you again. Dr. Ash was a relentless campaigner in the last election. We all know the stories, the legendary stories of his relentless door knocking. Did he knock on any of your doors? Not your door? His door, yes. He wouldn't stop. That was the problem. He knocked on doors even in my riding. And he wanted to come and help me out one day, and we were in the village of Manotick. And the problem is that he wouldn't stop knocking even after it got dark out. And it got to be 8:30, and he kept on going. 9 o'clock, one of our teammates said, "Listen, Dr. Ash, if you don't stop, you're going to wake people up, we're going to lose votes." So he got up to this big house with the lights off, and he said, "I'm going to do one more door." And the team said, "No, don't do it. You're going to wake somebody up." So he knocked anyway, and all of a sudden, baby's crying. So the lady comes to the door, she says, "Sir, you're in big trouble. You just woke up my 1-year-old triplets. And my husband, who is a 300-pound boxer, is coming down to have a word with you. Stay right here." He said, "That won't be necessary. I'll move right along. Just tell him that the local Liberal candidate dropped by to say hello." Very good move. He thinks on his feet. So, you know, and his story is really the Canadian story. Born in Delhi in India, but then got educated, managed to get a PhD. He's an expert in veterinary sciences, in toxicology. So he's going to be able to help us clean up the toxic finances in Ottawa when he's elected. But he studied all over the United States of America at some of the most prestigious educational institutions, and he said, "No, I don't want to be an American. I want to be a Canadian." He came here for freedom, to take control of his life. And that's, you know, when 100 years ago, when my ancestors went to Saskatchewan, it was for the exact same reason. We have a Saskatchewanian over here. All right. Rough Riders fan? Sure, okay. There's Riders fans everywhere. But, you know, back then, the then Prime Minister, Wilfrid Laurier, was asked, "What is Canada's nationality?" And he couldn't define it based on ethnicity, as many countries in Europe would have done. Because we were already mixed up. We had people from all over the world. We had Scots, Irish, English, Asian. We had the first peoples who were here before all of us. And so you couldn't define our nationality by ethnicity. So instead, Wilfrid Laurier said, "Canada is free, and freedom is its nationality." And so it is today. But lately, it has not felt so free in this country, has it? No. Whether you're the 14-year-old girl suffering from depression because of 2 years separated from sporting and social activities, or whether you're the single mom who lost your job because of a personal medical decision and don't know how you're going to feed your family or pay your bills anymore, whether you're the guy who mortgaged his house to start a business so that he could have a better future, but had it shut down so many times he couldn't open it up, or whether you're the hero that delivered our necessary goods and services across the border for 2 years without a vaccine, and we're suddenly hit with a vaccine mandate. And of course, and put out of work by a Prime Minister obsessed with control and obsessed with his vaccine vendetta. I'm talking, of course, about our hard-working truckers. I'm proud to stand with our truckers. And then there's the economic freedoms we've lost. The parents who are skipping meals so that their kids don't have to after food prices have risen so much that 4 in 5 families have now cut back on their diet in order to make the bills. Or the working guy who's lost the freedom to go for a hunting or fishing trip on the weekend because he can't afford $1.70 a liter for gas after all of the inflation and carbon taxes that Trudeau and Charest have brought in Canada and in Quebec. Or whether you're the 32-year-old living in his parents' basement because you can't afford $874,000 for the typical home in Canada. What's causing all this? Well, the government has printed $400 billion of brand new cash, flooding our economy with more money. More dollars chasing fewer goods always equals higher prices. If you have an economy with 10 loaves of bread and $10, it's $1 a loaf. But if you double the dollars to 20 with the same amount of bread, it becomes $2 a loaf of bread. So that's what happens when governments create cash to pay their bills. They inflate the price of everything, starting with the assets of the rich, but finishing with the cost of living for everyone else. It's just inflation, isn't it? Just inflation. just inflation. And it's hit housing the hardest. You know, house prices are up 100% since Justin Trudeau took office just 7 years ago. When Harper was last Prime Minister, you could buy the typical house in Canada for $434,000. The average person could own the average home. Now, that is not true. In Toronto, the average house price is $1.3 million. Vancouver, it's about the same. Now, what's causing this? Well, obviously, the $400 billion the government created went into the mortgage system. It bid up prices and increased the cost of everything. We see this throughout thousands of years when emperors, kings, dictators, presidents, and prime ministers run out of money and create more. They cause inflation that is passed on to the working class people. They inflate the value of the assets of the rich while taking away the purchasing power of everyone else. It's a transfer from the have-nots to the have-yachts, isn't it? That's what's happening in this country. The super rich are doing very well. They're getting ahead because the government is flooding their assets with more and more cash. But the working poor are falling farther and farther behind. So what are we going to do about it? One, we're going to get rid of the unnecessary inflationary deficits that are causing the money printing in the first place. I will cut the $100 billion slush fund that Trudeau has created. Get rid of the multi-billion-dollar infrastructure bank that exists solely to protect the profits of the corporations and the bonuses of the executives. And I found another $1 billion we're going to save. We're going to defund the CBC. I'm getting a lot of suggestions here on how we can save money. Boy, we can probably balance the budget before I leave the room here today. Yeah. And there's something else we're going to do to bring down the cost of living. We're going to axe the carbon tax, aren't we? And finally, we're going to get rid of the money printing altogether. We're going to re-announce and restate the traditional mandate of our central bank, which is not to print money for the wealthy to borrow and the politicians to spend, but rather to keep inflation low and protect the purchasing power of our money, isn't it? And we're going to allow for more competition. If governments are going to keep on ruining our money, the people should have the freedom to choose other money. You know, back after the 2008 financial crisis, when the bankers and politicians ruined the American economy, a unknown or pseudonymous programmer created something called Bitcoin, which is a private money that is run by no central authority or bank. Its decisions and its transactions are all verified by thousands of people around the world who don't know each other, who are plugged into the network, and who validate its transactions with a majority of the processing power having the decision-making authority. That means that no central bank, no government, no one individual can control the supply. There will only ever be 21 million of them. And I'm not telling you to go out and buy any. You can do whatever you want with your own money, do your own research. I'm not your financial advisor, but here's what I will say. People should have the freedom as buyers and sellers to use the money they want. Government should not be able to take for granted that it has a total monopoly on cash. If they ruin our money by printing more of it and favoring the well-connected and the well-heeled, then people should have the freedom to use other money where voluntarily you have a buyer and seller that agree. So a Pierre Polievre government will reject a China-style ban on Bitcoin. Instead of creating more cash, why don't we create more of what cash buys in this country, right? Let's grow more food, build more houses, and produce more responsible Canadian energy right here at home. Here's how you're going to do it. Get rid of the gatekeepers. Right now we have a gatekeeper economy where the bureaucratic elites block people from making stuff here in this country, right? Let's start with housing. In Vancouver today, the cost of regulation for every single unit of housing is $644,000. In Toronto, it's $230,000. That's the cost of getting the permits, paying the fees, hiring the accountants, the lawyers, the consultants, and working your way through the multi-year delays that it takes to build a home. All those costs are passed on to the home buyer. Why do you think it's so expensive to get a home in this country? In fact, we have fewer homes per capita than any other country in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. We have more land, fewer people, and yet the fewest number of houses. We'd have to add 1.8 million new houses in Canada today to have the same number of per capita houses that they have in the rest of the G7. And it's worse in Ontario. We'd have to add 650,000 new houses in this province alone just to get up to the national average. So what we need to do is get the gatekeepers out of the way so that they stop blocking the building. So today I announced that I'm going to be holding the municipal gatekeepers accountable. They say that housing is a national issue. I couldn't agree more. So if they want national infrastructure money from their national prime minister, they will only get that extra money once the new housing is built. So here's the deal. They're going to have to increase home construction by 15% a year, or a Polievre government will hold back some of their federal infrastructure transfers. Two, this is for the big cities, only those with more than 500,000. But for all the other cities, I'm going to bring in a building bonus. Instead of giving $10 billion of new money from the federal treasury to the municipal gatekeepers, as Trudeau promised in his recent budget, I'm going to reduce that down to $5 billion. And I'm going to pay it out as a building bonus. The municipalities will only get that money, $10,000 per unit of housing completed. In other words, it must be ready for turnkey so people can move in the doors. You want more money? Get out of the way and let us build more houses. And we're going to require that federally funded transit projects have a pre-approval for new housing right around the station so that young and low-income people don't have to own a car. If you're building transit with billions of dollars, there should be housing right next to the station so people can walk out the door and get on the train and go to work. Finally, I'm going to sell off 15% of the 37,000 underutilized federal buildings so that they can be converted into affordable housing and we can use the proceeds of the sale to pay down the deficit. And you know, I think the CBC headquarters would be a great place for some more on that. We're going to get the gatekeepers out of the way. We're going to get the gatekeepers out of the way of our brilliant immigrants who come here with credentials. They should be able to work in their professions. We have a doctor shortage, and yet there we have thousands of Canadian immigrants who come here qualified as doctors who have practiced successfully around the world that can't get a job working as a doctor because of provincial gatekeepers. So the federal government gives money to the provinces for immigration settlement. I'm going to make it a condition of that money that the provinces bring in a 60-day guarantee. 60 days after a newcomer applies to work in a regulated occupation, they should get a straight up or down, yes or no answer. And if they aren't qualified yet, they should get a small study loan so they can take a few months off work, get qualified, and a doctor can be a doctor, an engineer, a plumber, a plumber. Bigger paychecks for our immigrants. We're going to get the gatekeepers out of the way of our energy sector as well, aren't we? We're going to repeal no new pipelines bill, C-69, so that we can build Canadian pipelines with Canadian steel, and Canadian consumers, and generate Canadian paychecks. You know, we're importing 130,000 barrels of overseas oil every single day off the East Coast, even though we have the third biggest supply right here in Canada. That money should stay here to generate paychecks for our people. And rather than going offshore to fund Putin and Maduro and the other dictators around the world, right? So here's my plan for that. Newfoundland. Yes, we got a Newfoundlander. Give The Rock a big round of applause here. So Newfoundland has a plan to increase its production by 400,000 barrels a day. Well, Polievre government will remove the government gatekeepers in Ottawa to approve Newfoundland's plan, increase production by 400,000 barrels a day to displace all of the overseas oil, and within 5 years I will ban overseas oil from Canada altogether. And it's not not just oil. We have 1,300 cubic feet of natural gas, and we could be shutting down coal-fired plants in Asia by sending them our liquefied gas so that they could use that. The closest point in North America to Asia is British Columbia. The closest point in Europe in North America is Newfoundland. So we have a major shipping advantage over our competitors down in the Gulf Coast. You know what else we have? A temperature advantage. To turn a gas into a liquid, what do you need? Cold. Now, I'm told it costs 25% less to cool natural gas into a liquid up here than it does down in the Gulf Coast. Why? Because we have our most abundant natural resource is not oil or gas, it's cold weather, right? In fact, it was so cold the other day, I saw a Liberal with his hand in his own pockets. The Newfoundlanders have a plan to pipe natural gas from the Jandark oil field to their coast and cool it down to minus 161 degrees. So it becomes a liquid. They're going to ship it off to Europe, break European dependence on Russia, and replace dollars for dictators with paychecks for our people. We will remove the gatekeepers so that we can actually produce the minerals of the future. Right now, people are really proud when they drive around an electric car, right? Some of the lithium that goes into those batteries is mined, refined, and manufactured burning coal in China. Kind of defeats the purpose of driving an electric car, doesn't it? We have lithium, cobalt, graphite, all of it here. It's just that it takes far too long for us to get a mine approved. We also have uranium, a nuclear, someone just yelled out. We have, I think, the biggest supply of uranium in the world over in Saskatchewan. We could be producing these minerals and sending them for manufacturing, so manufacture here in Canada the batteries for electric cars and producing more clean nuclear energy to power the clean future for the world. That's what we're going to do in this country. And then it's not just the economic gatekeepers, though. It's the speech gatekeepers, isn't it? Yeah. You know, these modern-day woke folk. Yeah. Woke folk in the crowd today. They want to silence anyone who disagrees with them. They want to expand the power of the state to censor what we see and say online. Justin Trudeau proposes Bill C-11, which would give the CRTC the power to regulate what shows up in your newsfeed, right? So instead of having an algorithm predict what you actually want to see, it will be what the government wants you to see, as determined by a bunch of backroom, secretive calculations that will push down certain content government doesn't like and push up other content they do. What they effectively want to do is shut out any debate. They want everything to be like the liberal media in Ottawa, just reporting favorable news about Justin Trudeau, refusing to hold him accountable for his corruption and for his bad management. They don't want you to be able to speak for yourself. Further, according to some experts, this would make Canada the most controlled internet jurisdiction anywhere in the free world. In other words, no one other than a dictatorship would actually have this much control by government over the internet. So here's the plan, my friends. A Polievre government will repeal C-11, crack down on the bureaucrats who try to regulate our speech, and restore freedom of expression in this country.